Welcome back. Already we're on our 5th walkthrough, and today we will, as per usual, learn a lot of useful words. And today's theme is studies and occupations, but we will also learn some other great words such as the verbs to go and to return. And the all-important word when learning just about anything, how. But this first word, 开会, first tone, fourth tone. To hold a meeting or to meet, but somewhat still formally. So you wouldn't use this if you were just meeting your friends. This is more for business-like occasions. So 开会, to hold a meeting or to meet. 回, second tone, is often used in combinations with other words and can mean again or back, depending on if the word is about time or if it's about distance. For example, you can use a word that we learned last week, 回来, to come back. But we'll learn even more later on. Actually, right now, 去, fourth tone, is a very common word that means to go. And as I said, can also be combined with 回. 回去 would mean to go back. And it can be used in most contexts where you would use go in English, so it's very useful. 怎么, third tone, fifth tone, means how. Very useful, for example, when you want to ask, how do I say this word? Which is probably the most common question that you will use as a beginner in Chinese, and we will learn it later on. So 怎么, how. And if we add yang at the end, we'll get another word for how about. And maybe you remember that n could be used for that too, but this 怎么样 is more standalone and it doesn't need a context before. And also it can have many different meanings. But for example, you can say 你怎么样, which would mean how are you doing? 后, fourth tone, is another preposition, and we know by now that prepositions come after the verb. So instead of saying, for example, after you turn left, if you're giving someone directions, you can say you turn left after to get the same meaning as in English. Speaking of which, 左, left, 左, third tone. And by this I mean the direction left, 左. 右, fourth tone, the direction right. So we have 左 for left and 右 for right. I remember the directions by thinking of someone with a really cool handshake saying yo and raising his right hand. So I know that yo means right. And then I know 左 is the other, so that must be left. So we have yo for right. And then if we combine them, in Chinese there are many words that are just combinations of the extremes that become a meaning that is somewhat in between. And the same goes for 左右, third tone, fourth tone, which means approximately. It's not left, it's not right, but approximately something in between. But it doesn't have to have anything to do with direction. It can be just about anything. So 左右, approximately. 汉语, fourth tone followed by third tone. First we have Han, and perhaps you remember that this is the majority population of China, the Han people. And Yu means language, so Hanyu literally means the language of the Han people, which then is equivalent to Mandarin Chinese. So if we have a language, we need to speak. 说, first tone, can mean both speak, like in speak a language, but also say, as in when you don't hear someone and you say, what did you say? That would translate into 你说什么? 你说什么? You say what? 中文, first tone, second tone. 中 as in 中国, which means China, and 文 meaning language. So again, we have a word for Chinese. These two mean more or less the same thing, Hanyu and 中文, but fit better in certain contexts. But for now, they can be completely interchanged. So last week we learned about 不, the negation particle. Well, 不 is great, but it can't be used in every context. Namely, if you want to negate a verb, then you must use 没 instead. So for example, 有, which means to have. If you want to negate that and say I don't have, then you can't say 我不有. Instead, you must say 我没有. 我没有, I don't have. 些, first tone. This is a word that can be used in many circumstances, but most times it means some or a few. And since these are mostly phrases that are very informal, you will most likely just hear it be thrown around in different circumstances. But translating it into some or a few should make you understand the rest of the phrase. But remember with these everyday words that the most important thing is to not be thrown off by them. It's not to know the exact meaning every time. As long as you know kind of what they mean, then you can focus on the important words of the sentences and hopefully get the meaning. But if you're not familiar with these informal words, then you will get stuck at them and miss the really important parts of the conversation that actually convey the meaning. So 些, an informal word, some. So let's then move on to something a bit more tangible, a room. 房间, 房间 meaning room. 房, which is a house or a building, and 间 meaning space, and a space in a building is a room. So 房间, a room. And yet another very logically structured word is 办公室, office. 办 meaning to do or manage, 公 meaning public or shared, and 室 meaning room. So a shared room where you do things. A pretty accurate description of an office, I'd say. And I think I'll leave you there. But see you soon in part 2.